Good morning. First of all, I should declare that I have no conflicts of interest. And I'm now going to speak about snus. Snus is a kind of oral, low-toxicity smokeless tobacco. It's a moist powder of pasteurized, finely ground leaves of air-cured tobacco. Originally, it was just presented as a loose powder, as you see in this picture, but nowadays most users prefer the tea bag-like portion sachets. In 1920, snus was the dominating tobacco product sold in Sweden, but then sales went down while cigarettes became increasingly popular. And then snus use came to a bottom level in the mid-60s. And the upturn after that, at this particular time point, appears to reflect that the 1962 and 64 reports from Royal College of Physicians and the US Surgeon General had raised an emerging awareness of the harmfulness of cigarettes and the subsequent demand for less harmful alternatives. So now this emergence of snus use raises the question, which is the role of snus in recruitment of daily smokers in Sweden? We have to notice that young people can initiate daily smoking without previous daily snus use or with previous daily snus use, in which case is uptake of smoking most common. Among boys without previous daily snus use, 46% start daily smoking. Among boys with previous daily snus use, just 18% start daily smoking. And among all boys who have ever started daily smoking, 92%, virtually all of them, come from the group without previous daily snus use, while just 8% come from the group with previous daily snus use. For young girls, the figures are quite similar. Even more closely to 100% come from the group without previous daily snus use. While these figures refer more to individual conditions, we should look at the population situation and the development of the population picture over time. Here I have data showing how things have developed during the later half of the previous century. The blue segments of each bar represent the proportion of boys initiating daily snus use. The red segments represent the proportion initiating daily smoking, and the green segments represent absence of any initiation of tobacco use. And around 1960, there were few boys initiated snus use, but that was very strikingly increasing during the consecutive decades, and followed and associated by a decrease of initiation of smoking. A decrease even stronger than the increase of snus use, so that the net result was an increase of the proportion not making any initiation of daily smoking at all. So the increasing number of snus users seem to be recruited among boys who would otherwise rather have become smokers than have remained tobacco-free. Next question is about the influence of snus on quitting smoking. The best indicator is the quit rate, the proportion of everyday smokers who have quit completely. That is a high proportion, both in men and women. But the interesting is to compare men and women who have the same situation in terms of snus use. And comparing men and women without the history of daily snus use there is no difference between genders. If we compare men and women, both with the history of daily snus use, again, there is no difference again between genders, but the quit rates are much higher than among men and women without daily snus use. So, quitting smoking is not a matter of gender, but it is very much a matter of snus use or not snus use. Then we come to a very much debated question about dual use. It comes from the fact that part of the daily smokers without previous daily snus use, what I call the primary daily smokers, do eventually take up daily snus use. And this has raised concerns about possibly negative effects due to dual use. So we have to see what do the endpoints look like for primary daily smokers who do take up daily snus use and for those who do not. Here I have figures showing the endpoints for primary daily smokers, men who have taken up daily snus use. Some remain daily smokers, some reduced to occasional smoking, and most interestingly, those who quit smoking completely constitute a large majority. 78% of these men stop smoking completely. Men, primary daily smokers who have not taken up daily snus use, have a much lower proportion stopping smoking completely, and a higher percentage being remaining smokers. For women, the picture is quite similar, but the picture about smoking habits is not the complete picture, because among these smokers or non-smokers, you have certain combinations with snus use as well. And here you have the complete picture of male tobacco use among primary daily smokers who have taken up daily snus use. And the most interesting category, I would say, is this one: those who have quit all tobacco use. A large proportion of these daily smokers who have taken up daily snus use have finally ended up as tobacco-free. So it seems that the possibly temporary dual use is rather a stepping stone towards the beloved goal of tobacco-free life. We have certain, let me see, oh yes, this rather small proportion, 10% of all these people are daily dual users. Let's have a closer look at the remaining daily smokers. Among them, those who have a concomitant daily snus use, the number of cigarettes per day is just 12 cigarettes per day, while those with no concomitant snus use have an average daily cigarette consumption of 7 cigarettes, much more. So, daily smokers' cigarette consumption appears to be reduced by concomitant daily snus use. What do all these behavioral conditions mean for the population level health outcome in the Swedish population? Very interesting data have been published in the WHO Global Report, Mortality Attributable to Tobacco. What's unique about this report is that it presents not just these, so as to say, usual death rate figures, but it presents death rates specifically attributable to tobacco. And here we can, in individual age groups, compare all countries of the world. And I have here extracted some figures for Sweden in one column, as you see, and in the columns to the right, I have figures referring to the other European Union member states. One column for the minimal figures in Europe, outside Sweden, the median and the maximum. And these figures illustrate that for each one of these causes of death, the Swedish death rates attributable to tobacco are lower than the figures in any other European country, as long as we speak about men, the snus using half of the population, while women who have a much lower consumption of snus do not exhibit such a favorable situation as men do. To further compare the situation in Sweden and in Europe as a whole, we could pick out more figures from the WHO report. The WHO report presents, among other kinds of figures, figures relating to Europe as a whole. And here I have calculated ratios between death rates for Swedish men and the death rates for Europe as a whole. And I have done so for 3 different age groups and for 3 different examples of causes of death. And you see, in each one of these examples, the ratios are very low. That is, the Swedish death rates constitute a very small proportion of the death rates for Europe as a whole. And what is further interesting is that for each cause of death, these favors for Swedish men are more pronounced in the younger groups than in the older groups. And this co-variates with the development of tobacco use patterns in different age groups in Sweden. Here we see figures for daily smoking, respectively daily snus use in 1988-89, respectively 2004-2005. And in each age group, daily smoking has gone down very much, and equally in each age group, daily snus use has gone up very much. But this shift from smoking to snus use is more pronounced in the younger groups than in the older groups. So we see the same pattern between age groups, both with respect to health, favor, and dominance of shifting from smoking to snus use. And this covariance suggests, I would say, that the shift from smoking to snus use in Swedish men represents a large proportion of the explanation why the Swedish men's death rates are so much lower than they are in any other European countries. So, summary with regard to tobacco use patterns: initial snus use makes boys and girls less likely to start smoking. When initial snus use was increasing in Sweden after 1960, initiation of smoking went down, and there was an increasing proportion of young people with no initiation of tobacco use. Both in men and women, those with a history of daily snus use have substantially higher rates of quitting smoking than those without a history of daily snus use, reflecting the high effectiveness of snus as a smoking cessation aid. Let me insert that details about the cessation methods are just the same in Sweden as those we heard yesterday have been recorded in Norway. And smokers who take up daily snus use will seldom become permanent dual users. The vast majority quit smoking, and many will eventually quit snus use as well and become tobacco-free. The small number of daily dual users smoke fewer cigarettes per day than other daily smokers. And population health patterns show that Swedish men have lower death rates attributable to tobacco than men in any other European Union member state, while Swedish women do not have a similar position. The difference between Swedish men and other European men is more pronounced in younger than in older age groups. The shift over time from smoking to snus use has been more pronounced in younger than in older age groups. The co-variation between health advantages and increasing snus use suggests that the high consumption of snus instead of cigarettes among Swedish men is one important part of the explanation of their low mortality attributable to tobacco. Thank you very much for your attention.